The morning of Sophie's wedding should have been the happiest day of her life. But something inside her felt uneasy from the moment she opened her eyes. She tried to shake it off as nerves, but when her phone buzzed and she saw her mother's name, her heart dropped. She answered with a bright voice, hoping to hear excitement or love. Instead, her mother spoke casually, as if it was any normal day. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry, but we can't make it today," she said. Sophie froze, confused. "What do you mean you can't make it?" "It's my wedding," her mother sighed. "You know your sister Clara's hosting a big party tonight. It's important for her career. Your father and I promised to help. She needs us." The words hit Sophie like a slap. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her parents weren't coming to her wedding because Clara was having another one of her glamorous parties. She waited for her mother to change her mind, to say it was a joke, but the silence that followed told her everything. Sophie hung up without saying another word. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, as the makeup artist waited quietly nearby. Her hands trembled, and for a moment she thought about calling her father, but she knew it wouldn't change anything. Her parents had always chosen Clara. Clara, the golden child, the one who always got what she wanted, the one who never had to try too hard because their parents would bend the world for her. Sophie had spent her whole life being the other daughter, quiet, responsible, dependable. She never complained when Clara got the bigger room, the newer car, or the louder praise. But today was supposed to be different. Today was her turn to be seen, to be celebrated. Yet even on her wedding day, she was invisible again. Her friend and maid of honor, Maya, walked in, noticing the tension in Sophie's face. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. Sophie forced a smile and shook her head. "They're not coming," she whispered. Maya's eyes widened. "What do you mean, not coming?" Sophie swallowed hard. "They said Clara's party is more important." The room went silent for a moment. Maya wanted to say something comforting, but what could she possibly say? Nothing would make that kind of hurt disappear. As the ceremony began, Sophie stood at the back of the church, her heart pounding. The soft music played. The guests turned to look at her, smiling warmly, but all she could see were the 2 empty seats in the front row. Her parents' names were printed on the cards placed neatly on the chairs, waiting for people who would never arrive. She walked down the aisle with her uncle instead, trying not to cry. The guests thought her parents were delayed or caught in traffic. No one could imagine that they had chosen a party over their own daughter's wedding. She kept her smile in place, but every step felt heavier than the last. When she reached the altar, her groom Daniel took her hand and whispered, "You look beautiful." She nodded, but her mind was far away. Her voice trembled as she said her vows, each word feeling like a thread trying to hold her together. Daniel looked at her with love and pride, but even that couldn't fill the empty space where her parents should have been. After the ceremony, everyone celebrated, took pictures, and laughed, but Sophie felt like a ghost floating through her own wedding. The photographer kept asking her to smile, to look happy, but she couldn't fake it anymore. She went through the motions, danced when the music played, and laughed when people made jokes. But her heart was numb. When the reception ended, she watched the guests leave, hugging each other, carrying the joy of the night. Then she sat alone in her hotel room, still in her wedding dress, staring at her phone. She opened social media, hoping to distract herself, and that's when she saw it. Her parents' faces filled the screen, smiling beside Clara, holding champagne glasses under twinkling lights. Clara's post read, "Family is everything. Couldn't have done it without Mom and Dad." The picture showed them laughing, surrounded by guests looking proud and carefree. Sophie's stomach twisted. "Family is everything," she whispered bitterly. The words burned like fire in her chest. Tears filled her eyes, but anger rose quickly behind them. She had spent her whole life trying to earn their love. Good grades, steady job, polite manners. All for what? To be the backup? The afterthought? She remembered her childhood, how her parents would rush to Clara's performances, never missing a single one, while Sophie's achievements were barely acknowledged. She remembered birthdays forgotten, excuses made, and empty promises whispered with fake smiles. Yet still, she had believed they cared. Daniel knocked softly on the door, stepping inside. "Are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She tried to smile, wiping her tears. "They didn't even call," she said quietly. He reached for her hand. "You don't need them to make this day special." But Sophie shook her head. "It's not about needing them. It's about what it means that they didn't want to be here." Daniel didn't argue. He just held her close while she cried quietly against his shoulder. When she finally looked up, her face was pale, her eyes red. But there was something new in her expression, a spark of resolve. She whispered almost to herself, "They made their choice today. I won't forget it." The next morning, Sophie woke up early and looked at her reflection in the mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her, not because of the tired eyes or the messy hair, but because something inside her had shifted. The soft, forgiving part of her heart felt replaced by something harder. She wasn't going to beg for love anymore. She wasn't going to wait for them to see her. If they could choose Clara over her on the most important day of her life, then they didn't deserve a place in it anymore. Days turned into weeks. Her parents finally called, pretending nothing had happened. "How was the wedding?" her mother asked brightly, as if she hadn't missed it. Sophie listened silently, her jaw tightening. "It was beautiful," she said calmly. "You would have loved it," her mother laughed, oblivious. "Well, Clara's party was such a success. Everyone adored her new designs." That was the final straw. Sophie ended the call politely, but deep down, she knew things would never be the same again. Every time she looked at her wedding photos, she felt that empty ache return. The images showed smiles, laughter, and celebration, but to her, they were reminders of betrayal. The 2 empty seats in the front row haunted her, symbols of a lifetime of being second best. She realized then that it wasn't just about the wedding. It was about every moment her parents had chosen Clara over her. It had been happening all along, and she had simply refused to see it. But now, she saw everything clearly. The truth wasn't painful anymore. It was freeing. She stopped calling them, stopped trying to please them. She focused on her own life, her own happiness. Still, a quiet anger lived inside her. It wasn't loud or wild, but patient and deliberate, the kind of anger that waits. She told herself she wasn't looking for revenge, but deep down, a small voice whispered that one day, they would regret what they'd done. One evening, as she sat beside Daniel watching the sunset, he asked gently, "Do you still think about them?" She smiled faintly. "Every day," she said, "but not in the same way." She looked out at the fading light. "I used to want their approval. Now I just want peace." But even as she said it, she knew peace wouldn't come easily. The wound was still open, and some part of her wanted them to feel what she had felt that day. Abandoned, forgotten, and replaced. That night, Sophie scrolled through her phone again and saw another post. Clara announcing a new business project, one that looked suspiciously similar to the one Sophie had once helped her parents develop. The same patterns, the same style, even the same name she had suggested years ago. And once again her parents were right beside Clara, smiling proudly, helping her promote it. Sophie felt her heart harden. The anger she had buried began to surface again, sharper and clearer than before. Maybe she couldn't make them love her, but she could make them see her. Not as the quiet, overlooked daughter they could ignore, but as someone who could stand on her own and rise higher than they ever expected. She didn't know how yet, but at that moment she made herself a silent promise. One day, her parents and Clara would understand the pain they caused, not through words, but through the weight of their own choices. And when that day came, Sophie wouldn't need their apology. She would already have everything she needed: strength, independence, and the satisfaction of knowing she no longer lived in their shadow. That night, as the city lights shimmered outside her window, Sophie whispered, "You chose her over me. Now I choose me." And for the first time she believed it. Months passed after the wedding, but the pain didn't fade. Sophie tried to convince herself that time would heal her, that if she focused on her marriage and work, she'd move on. But every time she thought about that empty space at her wedding, the memory of her parents laughing at Clara's party came rushing back like a wave. The betrayal wasn't just a single moment. It was the summary of her entire life. Her parents' voices still echoed in her mind, always comparing, always praising Clara, while Sophie's efforts went unnoticed. Daniel tried to help her move on. He told her to let it go, to focus on their future, but Sophie couldn't. It wasn't about the wedding anymore. It was about all the years she had spent being second best. She had given everything to her parents, her time, her ideas, her loyalty, and they had thrown it all away for their favorite daughter. Every phone call from her mother, every cheerful story about Clara's success, felt like salt on a wound that refused to close. Her parents owned a small but respected event planning business, one Sophie had helped build for years before her marriage. She had designed their website, built their client list, and even handled their biggest projects. But when Clara decided to help, she was given all the credit. Sophie remembered standing in the background, watching her sister take the spotlight for work she hadn't done. Her parents didn't even notice. They were too proud of Clara's talent. Sophie had stayed quiet back then, but now silence wasn't an option. She wasn't planning revenge, not at first. She just wanted to take control of her own life. She started working again, reaching out to her old clients and using her creativity to design her own brand. What began as a small side project quickly became something more. Her designs were modern, elegant, and thoughtful, the kind that left people talking long after the event ended. Soon, clients started recommending her to others. She was professional, fair, and genuinely cared about her work. Word spread quickly, and her calendar filled up faster than she expected. It was only then she realized most of her new clients were ones who had previously worked with her parents' company. She hadn't planned for that, but she didn't stop it either. For once, she was the one being chosen. When her mother found out, the tone of her calls changed. "Sophie, I heard you're doing your own thing now," she said one evening. Her voice carried a forced cheerfulness. "That's nice, dear. Just remember not to compete with family." Sophie smiled faintly. "I'm not competing. I'm just doing my job." But inside she felt a quiet thrill. Her success grew quickly. She worked late nights, skipping meals, chasing perfection in every detail. Daniel worried about her, but she brushed it off. "I'm fine," she'd say. "I just want to build something that's mine." But deep down, it wasn't just about success. It was about proving to her parents, and maybe to herself, that she didn't need their approval anymore. Every new contract she signed, every glowing review she received, felt like another step away from their shadow. Then, one day, she got an email from one of her parents' biggest clients, a luxury hotel chain that hosted grand weddings every year. The manager explained that they were ending their contract with Sophie's parents' company and wanted her to take over. "We've seen your work," the email said. "You're the future of event design." Sophie stared at the screen for a long time, her heart pounding. This was the same client her parents had bragged about for years, the one they considered their proudest achievement. She accepted the deal. She didn't announce it, didn't post about it, didn't call to gloat. She just kept moving forward, but word got around fast. Within a month, her parents' company started losing clients. Her mother called again, sounding worried. "Business is a little slow lately," she said. "People just aren't booking like they used to." Sophie listened quietly, saying only, "That's too bad. Maybe it's time to try something new." Her parents blamed the economy, the competition, even their staff, never realizing their own daughter was the reason behind their downfall. At first, Sophie felt guilty. They had built their business from the ground up, and she had been part of that journey. But then she remembered her wedding day, the photos, the laughter, the caption, "Family is everything." That guilt slowly turned into something else. Justice. Clara, meanwhile, was thriving as always. Her social media was full of parties, sponsors, and smiling photos with their parents. She had no idea what Sophie was doing, and Sophie intended to keep it that way. But fate had a strange sense of timing. One day, Clara called excited as ever. "Guess what, Soph? I'm hosting a big charity gala next month. Mom and Dad are helping, of course. You should come. It'll be fun." Sophie forced a polite laugh. "Sure, send me the details." But after hanging up, she stared at her phone for a long time. That charity gala was being held at one of the hotels Sophie now worked with. She checked the schedule, and saw her own company listed as the backup decorator. She smiled quietly to herself. A week before the event, Sophie visited the venue to finalize her team's work. She saw her parents there, arguing with a supplier. They looked tired, older than she remembered. Her mother's hair was grayer, her father's shoulders slumped. For a moment, she felt a pang of pity. They didn't even notice her at first, too busy fixing another mistake. Then her mother turned and froze. Sophie. Sophie smiled calmly. "Hi, Mom." Her mother's expression shifted from surprise to discomfort. "We didn't know you were working here," she said awkwardly. Sophie shrugged. "I go where I'm needed." That night, as she drove home, she replayed the encounter in her mind. A small part of her wanted to call them, to end the tension, to forgive. But another part, the deeper part, wasn't ready. Forgiveness didn't erase the past. It didn't undo the fact that they had missed her wedding to attend a party. It didn't erase a lifetime of being overlooked. Weeks passed, and the consequences of her quiet success began to unfold. Her parents' business continued to crumble. Their trusted suppliers switched to working with her. Their clients didn't return calls. Her mother called one evening, voice trembling. "Sophie, we're thinking of selling the business. It's just too hard now." Sophie felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said softly. "But maybe it's for the best." Her mother sighed. "Clara's been too busy to help. We thought you might—" Sophie cut her off. "I can't, Mom. I have my own work now." There was silence on the line before her mother whispered, "You've changed." Sophie's voice was calm. "I had to." After the call, Sophie sat in the dark, staring at her reflection in the window. She had gotten what she wanted: recognition, independence, success. She had built something strong from the pain they gave her. But instead of feeling proud, she felt hollow. The victory tasted bitter. She didn't want them to suffer, not really. She just wanted them to care. But maybe that was too much to ask. Daniel found her sitting quietly, lost in thought. "What's wrong?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I think I got what I wanted." He frowned. "And that's bad?" She hesitated. "It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like losing differently." Her company continued to thrive, but she stopped celebrating her wins. She stopped checking her parents' social media. She focused on her clients, her marriage, her life. But deep down, she knew something still lingered. An unfinished story. A final thread connecting her to them. Then, months later, a new invitation arrived in her inbox. Clara's engagement party. The subject line read, "Can't wait to celebrate with the whole family." Sophie stared at it for a long time. Her chest tightened when she saw the venue name. Her company's name on the event contract. She was in charge of planning the very party her sister was throwing. It felt like fate had drawn the circle complete. Her parents would be there, Clara would shine as always, and Sophie would have full control of the event. Every detail, every supplier, every light. She could make or break the night with one decision. The thought made her heart race. She closed her laptop and leaned back, her mind spinning. This was her moment. Not just to prove herself, but to make them feel what she had felt. Forgotten. Replaced. Small. But as the idea formed in her mind, so did the question that had haunted her for months. Would revenge really heal her, or just turn her into them? Sophie stared at the ceiling that night, unable to sleep. For the first time, she realized her next choice would define who she truly was. Not the daughter they ignored, but the woman she had become. The stage was set. The party was hers to command, and the decision she made next would decide everything. The day of Clara's engagement party arrived with bright skies and a soft breeze, the kind of day meant for celebrations. But for Sophie, it felt like the calm before a storm. Her team was already at the venue, finalizing decorations, testing lights, and arranging flowers. Every detail had been planned by her, the theme, the setup, even the playlist. The party would be perfect because Sophie made it perfect. Ironically, her parents and Clara had no idea that the person running the entire event was the same daughter they had overlooked for years. As Sophie stepped into the grand ballroom, she looked around with quiet satisfaction. The chandeliers glowed like stars, the tables shimmered with gold accents, and soft music drifted through the air. It was beautiful. Everything Clara loved. Elegant, loud, and attention-grabbing. Sophie could destroy it all with a single call. One message to her team, one order, and the night would collapse. No music, no food, no lighting. Clara's perfect evening would become a disaster, and her parents would feel the embarrassment Sophie had once felt at her own wedding. The thought was tempting. For months, Sophie had carried the weight of anger and humiliation. She had spent sleepless nights imagining this exact moment. A chance to make them feel what she had felt when they didn't show up. This was her opportunity for justice. All she had to do was press send. Her assistant walked over, handing her a tablet with the live schedule. "Everything's ready, ma'am. Do you want to check the final arrangements?" Sophie nodded, glancing at the screen, but her mind wasn't on the details anymore. It was on the faces she would soon see, her parents and Clara. She hadn't spoken to them in months. When the first guests arrived, laughter filled the hall. Sophie stayed hidden near the back, observing quietly. Clara entered in a sparkling silver gown, glowing under the lights, her fiancé holding her hand proudly. Cameras flashed, people clapped, and her parents stood nearby, smiling proudly as if the world revolved around their favorite child. Seeing them together stirred something inside Sophie, anger mixed with longing. For a brief second, she wished things were different. Her mother's laughter echoed through the room. That same soft tone Sophie had grown up hearing, the one that used to comfort her, before it became a reminder of distance. Her father was busy greeting guests, shaking hands, looking proud and confident. They looked happy, unaware of the quiet storm standing just a few steps away. Sophie walked toward the control booth, her heart beating fast. She opened her phone and typed a quick message to her team. "Cancel everything. Walk out, don't say a word." She stared at the screen. Her finger hovered over the send button. She could already imagine the chaos. The music cutting out, lights going dark, guests whispering, Clara's shocked face, her parents scrambling to save their perfect night. It would be poetic justice. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Whatever you do tonight, make sure it brings you peace." Sophie froze. She read it again, slowly. Peace. The word felt heavy, unfamiliar. She looked around the ballroom once more, at the glowing lights, the happy faces, the laughter. Was this really what she wanted? To ruin one night and call it revenge? To become the same kind of person who could hurt someone so easily? Her chest tightened. She thought about her wedding again, how she had stood at the altar, waiting for her parents, hoping they'd walk in, hoping for love and approval. Destroying this event wouldn't erase that pain. It would only create more of it. It wouldn't fix her heart. It would harden it further. Sophie deleted the message and walked toward the stage instead. The event coordinator, unaware of the emotional battle happening inside her, handed her the microphone for a quick sound check. Sophie hesitated for a moment, then said, "Actually, I think I'll take a few minutes outside." She stepped out of the ballroom into the cool night air, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The city light stretched far beyond the horizon. She leaned on the balcony, breathing deeply. The sound of laughter floated from inside, but out here, everything was quiet. She finally let the tears fall. Not from sadness, but from release. For the first time, she wasn't angry. She wasn't waiting for an apology or a change. She simply accepted the truth. Her parents would never be the people she needed them to be. And Clara would always be their favorite. But that didn't mean Sophie had to carry the pain forever. After a few moments, she wiped her face, fixed her hair, and went back inside. The party was in full swing. Clara spotted her across the room and gasped. "Sophie, you came!" She ran over and hugged her, completely unaware of everything that had led up to this night. "I didn't think you'd show." "You look amazing." Sophie smiled faintly. "I helped with the event," she said. Clara blinked in surprise. "Wait, this is your company?" Sophie nodded. "Yes." Her parents turned, noticing her for the first time. Her mother's face softened with guilt. "Sophie, we didn't know," she said quietly. Her father looked uneasy. "You did all this?" She nodded again. "Yes, I wanted it to be perfect. Her mother's eyes welled with tears. "It's beautiful," she whispered. For the first time in years, her voice carried no superiority, no judgment, just sincerity. Sophie didn't know if it was regret or pride, but she didn't need to know. She had already found her closure. Clara pulled her toward the stage. "You have to take a picture with us." Sophie hesitated but allowed herself to be dragged forward. The photographer adjusted his lens as the three women stood together, Clara beaming in the center, their mother beside her, and Sophie on the other side, calm and composed. The flash went off, freezing that moment forever. Later that night, as the music slowed and the guests began to leave, Sophie stood alone near the exit. Her mother approached quietly. "You've built something incredible, Sophie. We're proud of you." The words came softly, almost hesitant, but they were real. Sophie met her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. There was nothing more to say. The years of disappointment, the anger, the silence, all of it began to fade, piece by piece. When the hall finally emptied, Sophie walked through the now quiet room. The tables were messy, confetti scattered across the floor, the flowers slightly wilted, but it all felt peaceful. She picked up a single white rose from a vase and smiled. She had come here ready for revenge, but she was leaving with something better. Freedom. Outside, Daniel waited for her by the car. "How did it go?" he asked. She smiled gently. "Better than I expected." He studied her face, noticing the calm in her eyes. "You didn't do it, did you?" She shook her head. "No, I almost did, but I realized it wouldn't have changed anything. It would have just kept me stuck in the same pain." He smiled, proud of her. "So what now?" She looked out at the quiet street, the lights reflecting on the pavement. "Now I move on. I stop fighting for their love and start living for mine." As they drove away, Sophie glanced at the city through the car window. The same streets that had once made her feel small now seemed endless with possibilities. She thought about her parents. Maybe one day they'd truly understand how much they'd hurt her. Maybe not. But that no longer mattered. The revenge she once craved had lost its meaning. The best revenge, she realized, was becoming someone they couldn't ignore. Not through destruction, but through success, grace, and peace. Weeks later, Sophie received a letter. It was from her mother. Inside was a short note written in shaky handwriting. "We should have been there for you. I'm sorry. You've become everything we hoped you'd be. Strong, kind, and wise. Love, Mom." Sophie read it quietly, a single tear slipping down her cheek. She placed the letter in a drawer and smiled. It didn't erase the past, but it gave her closure. Sometimes healing doesn't come from the apology you expect. It comes from the person you become after the hurt. Months later, Sophie's company flourished, and she was known as one of the best in the industry. People admired her talent, her leadership, and her calm strength. But those who knew her best understood one thing. Her power didn't come from revenge or anger. It came from forgiveness, from the choice to rise above the pain. One evening, as she walked along the beach with Daniel, she said quietly, "You know, I used to think revenge would fix everything, but it doesn't. It just keeps you trapped." He smiled. "So what fixes it?" Sophie looked at the horizon, the sun dipping below the water. Letting go, choosing peace, even when they don't deserve it. And as the waves touched her feet and the sky turned gold, Sophie finally felt free. The betrayal no longer defined her. The pain had turned into strength. She didn't need her parents to see her anymore. She saw herself clearly, morale. True strength isn't in revenge. It's in letting go of the pain that once controlled you. Revenge might bring satisfaction for a moment, but forgiveness brings peace for a lifetime.